Dan needs the link. I just got an email from him. I don't know if you could.
Did you see Dan's?
Yeah, I just told Nate. Yeah, okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Gray Town Council workshop on August 3rd, 2023. I'm going to start with roll call. Councilor Height.
Here.
Councilor Meany.
Present.
Councilor Gass.
Present.
And I'm Councilor Chapel. Councilor McGuire should be joining us remotely in a short moment. Okay, so tonight we're mainly discussing amendments to the FY24 municipal budget. Our last workshop, we primarily went over the capital improvement projects and made some suggested edits and asked staff some questions regarding what their flexibility is for cuts. But tonight I primarily would like to focus on starting conversation around our operating expenses. But we do need to revisit the capital improvement projects briefly tonight, since we've had a response from Mo Russo, our Buildings and Grounds Director, and we also have some further information that Town Manager Nate Rudy has put together regarding some costs around leasing hybrid vehicles for buildings and grounds and other items. So I think the best place to start is with Mo's memo, which is in the packet, beginning on page 2. Let me just go back to my notes. So I just want to thank Mo for all the work he put into this. This was very detailed and very helpful in terms of how we might prioritize items to make changes. I think it would be helpful, actually, since a lot of the beginning pages have a lot of dense text, to just jump to item 3, which is on packet page 3, where Mo has titled it Proposed Changes to CIP Projects. The first one was the Pennell staff door, which we were wondering if we could hold off on fixing that for a cost of $6,500. Mo said that we can move that to FY25. Does anyone have any issues with pushing that out?
I looked at
No.
that door and it didn't look that
No,
bad.
it's not too bad. Okay, so that's good. Next up was Central Station door replacement, reducing that to $5,000. What does he say here? Reduce to $5,000, move the $7,000 remaining over to FY25, and he'll try to address the most critical doors this year.
Mm-hmm.
That also sounded good to me. Similarly, for the public services, public works overhead door repairs, he's suggesting reducing that to $5,000 and moving the remaining $10,000 to FY25, addressing the most critical needs this year. This was the one that was a little tricky, the next one, the public services LED sign replacements. We had a lot of conversation, Ann, you weren't here, about moving the current sign outside of Town Hall over to the Public Services Complex instead of paying to replace the Public Services sign.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't in favor of that because I feel like the sign out at Town Hall is really important for information sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Mo said that in his response here that we can move the cost to FY25 because he's retained enough pieces from repairing the Town Hall sign this year to repair the public services piece at least for another year. So, Mo, I believe Mo's online, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that you feel comfortable. I know you wrote that you did, but I just want to make sure you're comfortable with what you have for parts for this year, if you really feel like it will last a full year.
Yes, we retained both signs that were existing at Pennell previously, and at this point, enough of the parts there should be able to keep us working for another year.
Can we have an increase in volume?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just repeat what he said. He said that he does have enough parts to retain a working sign for this year. Thanks, Mo. I just wanted to double check on that. I just want to comment that a lot of these things are much needed, and while Mo has been flexible about moving them to FY25, or at least pieces of them, it does still remain a need that we'll have to address in FY25. So these costs aren't really going away, we're just pushing them out.
Right.
Just keep that in mind for next year. Public Works stack replacement, $10,000 moved to FY25 will continue this year as status quo. Mo, can you just remind us what that stack does, what the purpose of it is? I couldn't recall.
Yes, the stack replacement is the essentially the chimney for the waste oil furnace that services the mechanics area of the Public Works garage. This one goes through the roof. The other one has a rear wall penetration, so it's not an issue. But this is one will need to be addressed at some point.
Okay, and do you anticipate the cost for that will remain pretty flat between this year and next year? Or are we potentially facing a cost increase by not addressing that this year?
I don't imagine the price is going to drastically increase from this year to next year.
Okay. Anyone have any comments on that one? No? Okay. Next up, library building repairs, $10,000 need to happen. Just trying to go back to our 10,000. Okay, so we need to maintain the library building repairs, especially since the children. I was in the library recently, and the air conditioner is not working in there off and on. And it was very uncomfortable at times. So it sounds like the children's wing is in need of a new HVAC compressor. And as Mo is noting here, it's costing more than it was anticipated. So not all of the library maintenance items are going to be addressed. So we definitely need to maintain at least that $10,000. He's also noting there was a $12,000 carry forward from costs that were not completely used up last year, which can be reassigned to some library maintenance. So that sounds good. Is everyone okay with keeping that line item?
Yeah.
Dan, if you, I don't know if I can see your hand, so if you have a comment, you just feel free to speak up.
All right, Krista. Yeah, I'm sort of, as far as okay to keep or not, I'm sort of reserving judgment at this point in time. It's a package deal in my mind, so.
Okay, fair enough.
Kyle, could we have some increased volume also for Dan?
The Vault Libby Hill Trail Groomer, $6,000 is designed for the hiking trails. It's a narrower, self-propelled groomer. He's saying this item can be removed from the current budget proposal. It may still be possible to purchase this piece of equipment with the balance of funds after we purchase a new ATV, which will be funded by carry-forward funds from previous year's budgets and the FY23 budget. So, Mo, it sounds like you'll still be purchasing that, but we can remove it as a cost. Is that correct?
Krista?
Yes.
It would depend on if we have any funds, if we have significant funds left over to be able to purchase it. If not, we will just put it off for another year.
Okay. Ann, go ahead.
Yeah, well, a question I had was whether or not Great Community Endowment could kick in some money. I mean, if the town can match it with some money from the carry forward or some other source, I mean, and it may be just fine to wait until next year, but I know that when I served on the Great Community Endowment Board, I wrote grants and we used some of our funding, our donations that people had given us to help purchase some of this equipment. So just a question.
Mo, do you have context there that you might ask
The
that
way
question.
The
Go
way the MOU is written is that the town is responsible for all capital projects now.
Okay.
So we're responsible for the equipment.
Okay.
Whether the endowment would want to, in the future, contribute to it. But the way it was structured is that the town takes care of all maintenance and capital projects.
Yeah, the way it worked before was that the GCE kind of fundraised and purchased the equipment and donated to the town. I understand that that may not be possible now, but I thought I would just raise that as an option.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we did, I don't recall the specifics of the Libby Hill MOU as much as Mo does, but that does sound
Yeah.
familiar to me.
I think that's right.
Okay, lastly was the Pennell HVAC repairs for $10,000 to cover the deferred maintenance of a number of issues ranging from motor replacement on a fan-forced units to sensor replacements to recharging the compressor with refrigerant. He's noting this is a must-do as last year's HVAC repairs alone for Pennell were $8,100 and the total budget for maintaining the building is $7,000. Mo, can you just give us a little insight into the breakdown of those numbers? Just-
Yeah, so last year we spent the $8,100 on keeping the boiler running and repairing those related issues. Every year, the thought is we go into the year with, we'll start picking away at the things that, that would maximize the efficiency of the equipment and allow us to adjust things. And every year, other things come up, so that stuff gets put off. So there are 17 different zones controlled by a VAV system, and most of those, the airflow calibration units do not work anymore. So to be able to air condition in certain areas, I have to do a manual override. So the system's not efficient, and it's working harder than it needs to. The system's 13 years old now, so the one-hole air handler side, we just had to recharge the refrigerant in it. So that's those type of issues. There are these items that get brought up in the maintenance, and they ask me if I want them addressed now. And knowing where we stand for the budget, it's nope, let's hold off, and we'll do that at another time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it sounds like not only are these necessary, but it would improve staff efficiencies by supporting them. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments on the Pennell HVAC repairs, maintaining that as a line item?
I have a question, Krista.
Sure, go ahead, Dan.
Mo, there's a lot of repairs from the survey that we had done. And that extends out, quite a bit of time. Do you have, or I'm wondering if we can take that study and, if you haven't already, sort of map it out into the future and look to see, what the total cost would be of all those repairs, sort of the priority of those repairs, so that, we know, almost like we do CIP, say over the next 3 or 4 years, what those costs would be associated with all of the items that were brought to the surface by that study. Is there a document like that?
So these issues are directly related to the age of the system we currently have. Everything in our system is operational. It's just, this will take care of us and get everything back to being fully operational as it was when it was installed.
Yeah,
There's
sorry. No, go ahead, sorry.
There is, so we started last year with everything that was most critical that needed to be addressed. This year's budget was the things that were, not the most critical. And so we're kind of working through every year on getting those things done. But it didn't outline specifically, little things in every system.
Right. I guess 13 years doesn't seem like that long a period of time for me for, you know, a system like this to be in this kind of shape. Maybe, you know, that's not an accurate assumption on my part, but I guess I'm just trying to get a handle on all of, I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm not being very articulate, but there's the occurrences as they come up, there's sort of the regular maintenance, and then there's all that catch-up stuff from that study. And I just don't have a good sense in my head as to how much money it would take to do all those different things going forward. Like next year, for instance, is there gonna be a big bolus of money needed to continue doing those things? And maybe there's no way to predict that, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud.
This building is very large, and it has a complex system to make everything run.
Yep,
It is a very good system. At the library, we're at 7 years out of renovation, and we already replaced the boiler because it was
Yep.
low bid and it was crap. So we have good equipment, but it just needs to be maintained.
okay,
When I started a few years ago, the system that runs the whole building hadn't been updated since a year after the building opened. And that's why we now pay a maintenance agreement just for the control side. So this is catch-up of 13 years of things that it stopped working, we didn't know. And then that's, at this point, I think if we correct all of these things, the system's gonna be back to basically as it was when it was installed, with the exception of the control system, which is either in next year's CIP or the year after. And that's the computer controls that control the system. And that is budgeted at $5,000. So
okay.
the big fear here, though, is at any one point, one of these compressor units could fail, and they're much larger than the libraries.
Yeah.
So that would be the thing that we have to worry about.
And what would it cost to replace one of those units? Just
If I were to
ballpark.
get between 25 and 50, depending on which one.
Yeah, okay. And do we have any, and we're not currently putting any, sort of setting any money aside for that, correct?
No, just that reserve account for contingency.
Yeah, okay,
We believe that the boiler is gonna give us another about 10 years until it needs to be replaced. So that's kind of where we're looking at. We're doing the maintenance, we just did a bunch of maintenance to the compressors, so, you know, aside from the coolant leak or the potential refrigerant leak, we should be good for a number of years. We did motor replacements 2 years ago. So these are, I mean, the system runs 24 hours a day to some capacity to keep the building operational. So
Yep.
that's,
I guess I just, we don't have to, maybe this is a conversation for later, but it seems to me that within the confines of CIP, we should either be making sure we schedule that stuff, or maybe we should be saving a little bit every year towards the eventuality of having to replace some of those things. So I don't want to get us bogged down in that right now, but I guess it's just something I'll make a note of and we can talk about later. Thanks.
you're welcome.
Mo, since you brought up the reserve account, it was something we had discussed last time we met also. I went back through my notes, and it looks like the current plan was to add another $10,000 to that contingency reserve for buildings and grounds. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's $30,000 in there now from saving in prior years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you feel like there's any capacity for reducing I know we already reduced it from your original ask of 15,000 down to 10, but do you feel like there's any room for reducing that reserve account a little, the set aside this year?
My only concern is this year we are undertaking probably the largest project that we've done in a long time. And essentially that contingency fund is what's going to, if we have a major overage, cover us for this project.
Okay, so if we did add this full 10,000, that would leave you with 40,000 in there, and you feel like that would be sufficient if you did have overruns for this project you're referring to?
That's correct. I mean, if the decision's to remove it, we will move forward, and as we always do, and, you know, we'll just address it as it comes up.
Okay. Do folks have any thoughts about maintaining that reserve at a $10,000 allocation this year, or, go ahead, Ann?
Ooh,
That-
I just had a quick question for Mo. So there's no contingency built into the budget for that project? Or it's inadequate, in your opinion?
This is a very complex project. We're doing as much of it in-house as we can. We have estimates from Grohl Palmer on the septic system. There are what we've estimated for the cost for the renovations. There are the estimates for the cost of the new basketball court and the pickleball court. There is some contingency built into it. It's just, we're talking about ripping stuff up that's been in the ground for 80+ years.
Right,
And we just need to be able to address it if it comes up.
sure. I guess it's my feeling that in this sort of volatile cost environment, that we should hang on to the contingency as he's proposed here.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Excuse me. I also wanted to ask Mo if that contingency account with $30,000 in it, that is also, would be available in the event of a compressor failure or something like that, if it weren't used for something else. I mean, is that part of the purpose of that account?
That's correct. The original intent of the reserve account was to be able to cover those unforeseen expenses that were unbudgeted, such as a compressor failure or a septic system failure of another facility. That way we weren't, what we have done in the past is we overspend that particular building's account line, and then we have to underspend every other line to make up the difference.
Right.
And that's how we get into the situation of they're, you know,
Deferred maintenance.
needing $10,000 in 1 year to make up for HVAC deferred maintenance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I support keeping that 10,000 in.
Me too.
Dan, did you have any thoughts?
No, I mean, we're not gonna be able to sort of take all possible things that could go wrong into consideration. I mean, I think that the goal was to have sufficient funds so that if we had something serious happen, you know, like with the sprinkler system debacle that we had, that we'd be in a position to keep funding the things that needed to be funded and not have to sort of rob Peter to pay Paul kind of thing. I'd prefer not to cut it, but it'll all depend on what we end up with for a number. So I mean, I don't think anything we're kind of agreeing to not cut now might not get cut later, do you know what I mean? The goal would be to leave it as it is.
Okay, yeah, I'm also in favor of maintaining that $10,000. I know the large project Mo was referring to is the septic repair and, or rather replacement for the Pennell complex with the 70-year-old septic. So there's a lot of unknowns in the ground is what he's referring to. Okay, so I'm just going to go back up to the top of Mo's memo because the two items he elaborated on a little more were kind of a little more up in the air. The first one was the skid lift, which would be an outright purchase of $20,600. In his memo here, he outlines the rationale for purchasing this equipment. While it is a large expense, the only other option we have is to rent a cherry picker, which is really not, doesn't sound safe based on how he's describing it. It's being carted around by a trailer, and I don't know, just the way he was describing it doesn't sound ideal. But the cost of that cherry picker rental is $4,500 per year, and the only place to rent it from is out of state in Massachusetts. So the skid lift supports not only swapping out the banners we've had around town, but Mo was indicating he could use it for tree maintenance and also some much needed building repairs that are too high to reach with their current equipment. The cost would be paid back in about 4.5 years, with the cost of renting something similar. What are folks thinking about the skid lift?
I mean, honestly, just in the interest of time, it's already half an hour on
Yeah.
$55,000 of a much larger amount that we need to cut. I would accept all of Mo's make a motion to accept all of Mo's recommendations and just move on.
Okay, that's fair enough. We're not voting, so I don't think we need to make a motion, but we
Yeah.
can certainly take like a poll or something if people would like.
Well, I guess the question arises in my mind about, if the real need is these banners, I wonder about just not doing not funding, not tasking him with placing the banners.
Yeah, I had that thought too. And you make a good point. I know we're eating up time because it's just complicated, but I don't want to skip over the item number 2, the vehicle purchase, because we had a lot of conversation around that. So let's just try to wrap up on the skid lift quickly. But yeah, Mo, can you elaborate on whether or not this skid lift is really necessary beyond the banners? I know that you could use it, but how necessary is it?
It's a function of being able to do maintenance on buildings. If we don't have it, we have to rent it. So, and that's what we've been doing in the past. If, we can certainly cut this. We don't need to do the banners anymore. That's fine. But if the expectation is that I continue to change out the seasonal banners, then that money needs to be budgeted somewhere. Traditionally, it come out of the CEDC, and that's where it got charged off to. So I do not have the ability to spend $4,500 in rentals in my budget to change out these banners.
What about, but you feel like it would be a real need for you to do other types of maintenance around town?
One of the issues is when you need to use a piece of equipment is finding if it's available. That's, if you have the equipment, you can use it whenever you need it. If you need to do a project and, it becomes, well, when you can only do it when the equipment's available. So there's a number of things that are kind of on the list of things to get to. And this skid lift would allow us to do that. So it's more than just the banners. The banners, it was the driving factor to moving towards needing this.
Okay. So I agree that the banners are certainly not a necessity, but it does sound like there's some deferred maintenance that we're not doing as regularly as we could be doing because we have to depend on the availability of rental equipment. I think I'd be in favor of maintaining this. I know while the banners are not a necessity, they certainly add to the feel and beautification of the town that we're aiming to accomplish with the type of work we're doing, like the pocket park and all the infrastructure work we're ultimately going to be doing. So even if we don't feel the banners are important in the short term, I think long term they would certainly add to the messaging for the town. Dan, did you Did you have any thoughts?
You know, I hear what Mo's saying. It's an expensive piece of equipment. I don't disagree that it would make his life and everyone's life that has to do that work easier. You know, there are different kinds of lifts. There are other kinds of lifts that could be rented locally. Again, I don't want to get into that now. I guess this is something I probably would cut for this year.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about it. Marty, did you have any thoughts on the skid lift?
Which one of the plans makes more sense again?
What do you mean
I
exactly?
mean, we can rent one or we can buy one.
Right, those are our two options. Mo is currently renting equipment that's only available out of Massachusetts. The local company's no longer
That-
renting the
that's-
skid lift.
That's kind of far
And
to
it's-
just to get a lift.
Right, and that's added to the cost, which would amount to about $4,500 per year.
We, you know,
Well, and I guess I would ask, I'm sorry, Marty.
that's all right. I would guess we might be in a position where it'd be more economical to buy one.
Perhaps. Yeah, Matthew?
I agree if, to me, the question is, do we task Mo with putting up the banners or not? You know, and if we say not, then that eliminates the driver, or one of the drivers for buying this year. So I agree, if we're gonna continue to task Mo with doing this, that we should buy it. You know, putting up the banners, but, so that's really the question in my mind.
Okay. And you just want to go with Mo's recommendation to bot purchase?
I mean, it seems to me to be a compelling argument that maintenance and repairs inside high ceiling buildings such as Public Works, Transfer Station, Pole Barn, Salt Shed, Public Safety, Dry Mill Station, and 2 Turnpike Acres, as well as
Yeah.
exterior maintenance of almost all of the town's buildings is, you know, honestly, I could forego the banners, but all
Right.
the rest of that stuff sounds like it would be useful to have it. And not to mention the, you know, safely removing large snow loads from the overhang when it exceeds the melting capacity of the heat tape at the transfer station.
Oh, that's
I mean,
right,
it's
I
just-
forgot about that.
I mean, I just feel like
Yeah.
he's made a good argument for trying to hang on to
Yes.
it. And so I mean, I don't know what the cost of that is off the top of my head.
Their daily
25.
rental was $675.
Yeah, but I don't know what the cost of purchasing.
It was $20,600.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's a cost. I think there are other areas that I'd be more willing to cut. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. Let's leave it in for now. Like Dan said, we might just have to come back around again on some things. Okay, next up, and let's try to make it brief, but next up was the vehicle purchases which was kind of like musical chairs of vehicles. Nate, can you just go over again where the vehicles are going and who's getting what?
Yes, I can.
I remember, but I feel like you'd say it better.
So we have a pickup truck, a full-size pickup truck in the code office and assessor's office that is shared. The proposal is to move that vehicle to buildings and grounds because they need a pickup truck, and to acquire ostensibly a SUV for the code office and assessor to share. Sharing a vehicle between those departments is a little tricky certain seasons of the year, but that's what we're proposing because we don't want to propose 2 vehicles. The priority for them is ground clearance and all-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. That's why we're suggesting an SUV rather than a truck, and rather than a car or some other vehicle that wouldn't have the ground clearance or the all-wheel drive. You might be able to get a Subaru that has that, but our recommendation from the town mechanic was to buy a Toyota, Honda, something like that, that has a reliable track record, that is easy to get repaired. And in the case of gas hybrid vehicles, their impression, and I can actually speak to this anecdotally, is that those vehicles are very easy to maintain. And if there's an issue with the gas hybrid engine, you take it to the dealer. It's not something that we would be working on at the shop. his recommendation was that we look at either a Toyota RAV4 gas or a Toyota gas hybrid vehicle for that purpose. So moving the pickup truck into buildings and grounds, they've asked for another truck. And then the vehicle that Mo and the buildings and grounds currently have, that is a Chevy Tahoe that we got from the sheriff's office last year, to move that to the animal control officer, who is currently driving a vehicle that is beyond obsolete. So we're doing some shuffling
Right.
and adding a couple of vehicles into the mix, but this is to accommodate the needs of those four different departments.
So what was the potential truck for then? That was a purchase, the hybrid, the F-150?
That was to go to buildings and grounds. So we're moving one truck out of
Okay.
one truck into buildings and grounds from code and assessor,
Right,
acquiring another truck. Per the memo, Mo told us that there's several different crews working in different areas around town, and that would help them be not operationally limited.
okay, so Buildings and Ground is essentially getting two new
Two
vehicles, one a current vehicle we own and then a new
But they're
new
losing a
purchase.
vehicle, so they're netting one
Oh,
new vehicle.
right.
Because
one
that
of-
vehicle's going to the ACO. The ACO's current vehicle will probably be scrapped, or, sold.
Right, I
for
know you
parts.
said it was on its last
And
legs.
then the truck that's being moved out of code assessor's offices will be, proposal is to replace that with a SUV, small SUV.
Okay, I believe in our packet, there was a breakdown of the things you also handed out today.
Yeah,
Were those
I
different?
provided you a reformatted version of the document. The material is comparable, but it shows the total cost of ownership for a gas versus hybrid full-size pickup truck, and then a gas SUV versus several different hybrid options. And it shows the purchase cost projection and then the total cost of ownership projection
Okay.
for those.
Right, it looks like on both the Ford F-150 hybrid and the RAV4 hybrid, the total cost of ownership difference is just around $1,000. It's pretty,
Yes.
it's not much more expensive, even though the original purchase price is more than $1,000 more. I'm still in favor of trying to get these hybrid vehicles. I think, while they're not electric, they certainly are better than just a gas vehicle, and also they're simpler to maintain, from what I understand. What are folks' thoughts on the?
Yeah, I'm also in favor of getting hybrids
Okay.
for both those.
What about just the? I'm in favor of maintaining the vehicles as we've outlined, the purchasing and shuffling around. I know it's a cost, but I think it will create efficiencies with staff, not to mention replace a vehicle for the animal control officer who's, the vehicle's, from what I understand, barely functional. So there's some reliability that would improve for his office also. What do
I support that.
you would support that? Okay.
Yeah.
Marty?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So go ahead, Dan.
Nate, in the information we got, these are proposed leases, is that correct?
These are,
Lease purchase.
these are purchase prices outright, but I did also provide you with material about the option to, for a 3-year lease rather than an outright purchase. And so the outright purchase cost was $44,000 for the pickup truck and $36,000 for the hybrid. For the lease purchase over a 3-year period, the pickup truck price is approximately $15,000 for 3 years. And then we'd have to dial in the exact cost to have an exact number, but that's a ballpark. And then for the pickup truck would be $15,000 and change per year for 3 years.
And those were traditional leases where the car would go back to the dealer at the end of the 3
No,
years?
these are lease to own.
Okay, that's what I wasn't sure of.
Yeah, $1
I
at
haven't
the end
done-
of the lease term.
Right.
I haven't done the math, but I think I'm in favor of lease of purchase suggestion. It will be a little bit more money over the 3 years, but it will make it easier to get into those vehicles this year at a reduced cost for both of them.
The lease cost for both leases is approximately $2,500 over the term of the 3-year lease.
The total cost extra
Yeah,
besides purchase.
The interest
the
cost
interest cost,
is an
yeah.
additional $2,500.
I mean, it's a significant reduction in what we have to outlay in cash this particular year.
So the lease payment for this year would be around, I think you said 15,000, right?
Approximately for both vehicles, approximately
And then
15,000.
I'm trying to find the total for the vehicles here. I couldn't. It would be what, around $80,000 to purchase both vehicles this year.
Yeah, 85-ish. That's assuming we can get one for the MSRP and assuming we can even get one at all.
Right.
So there may be, the document fee, dealer markup, different things like that. We've got to try to factor that in somewhat to your final decision.
Now you can use contingency for that.
Yeah, possibly, yes.
Matthew, do you have your hand up? Or was it-
No.
No, okay. Yeah, I think I would be in favor of leasing these. Dan's right, it is a significant cost reduction this year. And it's really not a lot in interest. It's a little over $2,000 in interest for the 3-year term. I don't know if it's easier, like you're saying, a lot of this depends on the availability of the vehicles. I don't know if we would have a better chance of securing one as a lease or for a purchase.
That's a good question. So it won't make a difference because we're doing the leasing through the bank, so the dealer, it's transparent to the dealer.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
like a cash deal for
Yeah,
the
it's not
dealer?
like they get an incentive because they're
Okay.
financing it, so they're more inclined to
Okay.
help us out.
But I guess I support that too, but I think we should find out, to the extent that we can, or make, the documentation costs and all the additional costs that are gonna be put in there. I don't think, if we know we're gonna have those costs, that we ought to be projecting them as well as we can, rather than just counting on contingency.
Yeah, what I would propose to do is to add some dollar amount over
Yeah.
whichever you decide to do, to like a $1,500 on top of whatever you decide to do for us to cover those costs
Okay,
in year one.
so I support leasing them if it doesn't affect the availability of the vehicles.
Right, yeah, I think
Okay.
that sounds good on a way to proceed.
We don't have to pay sales tax on it, right?
That's correct.
Well, you might once you purchase them at the end, right, but,
No, 'cause
No,
they're
you
gonna
just
be
found
out.
The town doesn't pay.
Yeah.
oh, that's nice. Just trying to remember, so, Nate, did you want to highlight anything else that was pending on the CIP? I know we hadn't,
So,
We had a couple other
as of
things.
yet, I don't have any direction from council that I have encoded into budget changes, except for what I'm assuming that the items you've discussed tonight, you want me to put those changes in, and I want to get you a revised budget proposal. I want to include the SRO vehicle cost projection for $34,000. That vehicle is not available, so that's, I want to propose.
you were removing that from
Yeah.
the CIP, right? Yeah,
Well, I'm asking, I haven't removed anything yet. I want to make sure I confirm all this with council before I commit changes. But I'm keeping a list. So here's the list as I have it so far. You have discussed eliminating the panel staff door replacement. for
Correct.
$6,500.
Mm-hmm.
Reducing the budget of the central station door replacement by $7,000 to $5,000. Eliminating the public works stack replacement for $10,000. Reducing the public safety, public works overhead door repairs by $10,000. You have given me some direction on giving you, I'm assuming, gas hybrid vehicles with the lease option plus some cost for the closing documents on the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm suggesting that you eliminate the purchase of the SRO vehicle from this year's budget.
Mm-hmm.
That will probably show up in your FY '25 capital budget, but for now, I say take that out, because even if you wanted to buy that vehicle, it's not available.
That, the SRO vehicle is what? The
School resource
officer?
When the vehicle comes to its end of life for the county, they offer to sell it to us or the school district at
Okay.
a reduced price. And that
Okay.
was the price that was negotiated, but the vehicle, they're keeping that vehicle for another year because
Okay.
they had an unplanned
Okay.
replacement.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
So it's not, we might or might not want to buy it next year, or the
Yeah.
school might or might not want to buy it, but this year it's not available.
Okay.
The only other, just double check. Those are the only changes that I recall in the CIP budget. You had, as far as operations go, you were having discussions about other items, and I guess you're gonna move on to those.
Well, yeah, so we also just talked about the public services LED,
Right.
the 16,000
Right.
moving to FY '25.
Okay.
And then last time we talked about cutting the allocation for the skateboard park for this year.
Right.
I would be in favor of that.
Yeah,
me too.
they're not really organized around planning yet, so they need some more time to gather their thoughts anyway. What are the other things?
You
LED
just
signs,
last-
the skid lift we were keeping.
Right.
Yeah.
At your last meeting, you discussed,
You know, that's what I was just looking at.
the land acquisition fund.
Right, that's kind of the one big,
Yeah,
Thing,
that's
I
another,
think.
the 50,000 in CIP.
right, that we also we were asking about whether there was any flexibility for road resurfacing.
Oh, yes,
That was
that's
one other item. Tim, would you mind coming up to talk about that? Just a reminder to introduce yourself. before you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tim Estes, I'm the interim public works director.
Yeah, so last time, it must have been later in our meeting, but we were just wondering if there was any room in the CIP allocation for road resurfacing do you feel like,
I feel like I could give you 50,000 out of that,
okay, all right,
but no more, because escalation, the price of crude oil is going up, and I
Right.
don't know how much the escalation price is gonna be. But I could give you 50,000 out of that.
okay.
That's for both road construction and road reclamation?
Correct.
Okay,
I
Which
actually
road
combined
would-
those together.
right.
All right.
Which road or roads would we pave? Because the-
We're paving Long Hill Road, Whitney Road, excuse me, Ramsdale Road, Two Rod Road, and Seagull Drive.
And those are some of the roads we did not get to last year, is that correct?
No, they are
No.
not. We had on there Spruce and Libby Hill, and we're working on this, doing that the same year. The sidewalks are gonna
Right,
be done and
that
everything.
makes sense.
So we kind of put those on the back
Okay.
burner for now.
All right, but that's only because we potentially are getting an earmark
Correct.
to address them.
But these
Yeah.
roads, especially the three long roads, Whitney Road, Long Hill, and Ramsdale Road, are in desperate need of repair.
Okay, and you think you could still get all those done with $660,000
Yes.
instead of 710?
Yes, I also have a carry forward from '23, which will help as well.
Okay,
And so I didn't
Go ahead, Matthew.
understand, which ones wouldn't get done if we cut the 50,000?
No, they will all still get done.
they will all still
Oh.
get, he's removing Spruce Drive and Libby Hill Road because those roads are probably being reworked if we successfully obtain an earmark from
Okay.
federal government grant that we applied for. So, Anne, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just had a question. I thought I remembered you saying that in a previous meeting, that the bids for the paving came in a little lower than you had expected for this year? Is that's part of where the help comes from?
That's part of how I can give some back.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, thank you so much.
Okay, let's make that change too then, Nate. Thank you, Tim.
Okay, so 50,000 I'm gonna take it out of the road construction budget rather than zeroing the road reclamation budget,
Oh,
in case there is
That
some
makes
claim
sense.
that you wanna do.
Okay.
yeah. And then, while you're here, we were also wondering about the bridge repair.
Actually, Doug would know more about that
Oh, okay,
than myself.
great. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Sure. Doug, would you come up? I think that there was some conversation around whether these both had to be done this year, or if there was any space for pushing them out.
So Doug Webster, Planning
Yeah.
Director. What's the Planning Director doing talking about bridges? I have a lot of interface with the town's consulting engineer, so I've been talking with Will Haskell about these. The repairs for the McConkey are pretty much essential, even though that's a relatively new crossing. It's getting undermined, and what's happening, what's happening with these big storm events is that the structural integrity of that is continuing to be compromised. So the longer we wait on that, the more costly the repairs are going to be. With regards to the Totten Road, that is, I've talked with Will Haskell about this. The state replaced that about less than 25 years ago, and it's an arched crossing. And for whatever reason, the steel that they use for that arched crossing, we had something similar, if you recall, that was specified in the CZA for Woodcock, for those that were involved with that. But in any event, for whatever reason, the steel is not holding up. The steel is starting to be not structurally sound. And the issue with Totten is that in order to effectively budget for the replacement, we need the design and the estimated cost. And so this is a 2-year thing. So that's the important component to that. So
Okay, so sorry to interrupt you, is Totten Road is currently budgeted for $50,000 in this one? Is there another $50,000 for Totten Road next year, if it's a 2-part?
we won't know that
Oh,
until
okay.
the engineer. The 50,000 is for looking at the existing conditions, looking at what's necessary for the design, looking at the permitting, and coming up with an estimated cost of construction for assumed inclusion in the FY25 budget.
Okay, I see.
So
Okay.
that's why I say there's a lag, and that it's uncommon to have a crossing not last. It should have held up longer, is the bottom line. And the reason that we're in this situation is because at the time at which it was replaced, the town was not in an urban compact, and now it is. So whether or not DOT is going to be willing to help, anyone's guess.
Well, if I can, it's not really a question of if they're willing to help. I mean, if this is kind of like the stormwater issue on Main Street. If they built that, which easily should have a 40 or 50-year lifespan, I definitely think we need to talk to the state about kicking in some money for the repair. It falls under the same kind of issue, I think, that we're having on Main Street. So I guess I'd almost want to hold off until we have that conversation with the state myself.
Okay, well, let's leave it in for now. Nate, just as a follow-up item, I think Dan's right, we need to inquire with the DOT. And I know we mentioned last time potentially if we could add this to our bond also.
With regard to McConkey, the McConkey fix, is that shoring up what's there? Will that essentially shore up what's in place?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, so it's not, the scope of the project isn't to redo the culvert or whatever is there, but to just repair it.
My understanding from talking with Will with regards to McConkey is to address what is causing the undermining to occur and get it stabilized to the point that continued storm events will not further compromise the structural integrity.
That makes sense. What size are the culverts at McConkey, do you remember?
Ooh, I just saw that too. Because we're tracking that down to
I mean,
two
the reason
36s or two 48s, I think. They're pretty good sized.
Okay, so I guess the reason I bring it up is that the crossing or the culverts under McConkey figure into the Main Street stormwater project.
It's a
in the potential, and that's where the water's gonna end up going at some point in time. So if we had to do work there, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't spending money now for having to change something later, but it doesn't sound like we will. Is that a fair assessment, Doug?
It is, and I just remembered because Will and I are working on, behind the scenes, collecting some of this information. It's a concrete box culvert, and it has an 8-foot span. So the concrete box culverts are pretty bulletproof. My understanding is that it's not necessarily the foundation, but where the soil meets the concrete box culvert is the issue.
Okay, thank you.
And again, the Totten Road, there is a little bit of a time element there. If that's removed from the budget at a certain point, that's.
DOT did say they could shut that down if it gets to the point where it's bad.
Okay.
It might just not be a through road anymore.
Tim's advising that DOT said that if it got to the point that there were safety concerns, DOT said it could be shut down. I suspect there'd be some understandable resident input on that. But,
Yeah, I don't think people would be happy about it.
but yeah.
I don't support cutting funding to correct structural problems on bridges.
Agreed.
Right.
I don't think
I
we really
agree.
need to discuss it
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I do think that the question was, right, not so much to cut it, but whether it could be deferred, which it sounds like it can't. But then also, we had a question around whether we could bond it, and it sounds like we have a new question about whether the DOT could chip in for repairs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we can move on from that.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to bonding it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just a couple other things on the CIP, Nate, since you're recording changes. I think Josh had agreed to also cut the library.
Meeting room tables and chairs for $10,000.
Right, so he was removing 10 and making it 8, yeah.
I've got that down if council's
Okay,
given that direction.
yeah, we were okay with that. Okay. We can always come back to the CIP, but I think that's a really good start of changes. I think I would like to move on to the operating budget. So I was trying to think about the best way to go about this. I think we should approach it similar to how we do our budget regularly, where we just kind of go through each department, and then I can kind of get suggested thoughts from each person. Some departments really don't have much, at least in my opinion, wiggle room, but you kind of get a straw poll from people as we go. Given the people in the room, I was going to start with admin, but given the people in the room and online, I think we should start with Public Works, Public Safety, and I think Anthony's online for rec.
Can I offer one from admin that I think is easy?
Sure.
There is an annual employee training day line under the manager's expense budget that I believe is redundant to funding proposed in the new human resources budget. So that's $500. I'd just like to submit making that reduction $500.
So line 02600 under
It's
admin?
line 0110, 02700.
And we're looking
Sorry,
at the-
02600, you're right.
Okay.
And we're looking at the council
This
packet,
is on the, yes.
page 15, 17.
So you would propose making that a total of 1,100 instead of 16?
Yes, instead of 1,600.
Okay, well, that's, like you said, easy, that's good. Okay, I don't know what comes first in the packet, public safety or public works, I can't remember.
First thing after admin is human resources and then
Yeah,
community
Well,
development.
Can I just ask a point?
That's right.
Are we gonna go down through the accounts, or are we gonna jump around?
I thought we'd go by department,
Yeah, that makes sense. to me.
yeah, and then just get people's thoughts on various things they noticed. I know some of the accounts go across departments, but, which
Are we
one?
gonna stick with administration then, since Nate jumped in there, or are we gonna?
No, I think we can come back to administration.
Okay.
Let's start with, Parks and Rec. I see Anthony's online.
Okay.
Do we, well, that's fine.
Okay.
Right,
What
Which
page- what page is
packet
that?
page is that?
Oh, I'm using the thing from last week. Hold on. Packet page. It's Department 0321 at the top.
So that starts on page 28, sorry, page 42 of your packet.
Let's see if I got the same one.
43?
42.
Buildings and
42.
grounds.
No, Parks and Rec.
That must be
Okay,
close.
got it.
Okay, so some things I've noticed across budgets that I'd like to address. I'm not going to talk about those each time I make suggestions. One thing is telephone costs. Another, which I've brought up before, is electricity increases that don't seem to align with our fixed rate for our municipal solar array. But there are, and this does go across departments, but one thing I had for rec was under personnel development, Anthony, there's 2 line items under personnel development, which is 02-150. One is attending an ACA conference for $928, and another is what I'm assuming is Northern New England Conference for $1,000. I'm going to just want to preface that by saying I think I'm going to be asking all the departments whether or not conferences are necessary, because if you add them all up, it's actually quite a lot of money we're spending to send people to conferences, which I'm not saying are not valuable, but I think it might be a way to find some money some places in the personnel development. So Anthony, would you mind speaking to the conferences, what those are and how necessary they are?
Yeah, I do. I hold a lot of value in the ACA conference. That's an American Camp Association conference. This past year, we were able to send not only our child care services coordinator, but a lot of our summer leadership staff. And to run a large program, the length of time that we run it, I think it's imperative to have our leaders all on the same page in terms of what our goals are. So anyways, I do place a high value on the ACA conference. As far as the Northern New England's, I mean, conferences like that can be valuable to me. It's hard to know what's going to be valuable without having an idea of what the agenda is, what the speakers are speaking about and what the subject matters are. So if we had to make a cut, I would make a cut there. I would keep the MRPA, that's the state of Maine Rec Parks and Association Network conference. So yeah, that's my thought on the conferences.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'm definitely not picking on Parks and Rec. I've made this suggestion across departments when we get to them, but, and I recognize that they are valuable, especially in certain instances, and it sounds like the ACA conference is one of those. Those were all the things I had flagged for rec. Dan, did you have a comment on conferences or
Yeah,
just?
what account number were you talking about?
02-150 under Parks and Rec.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Did anyone have any other items they flagged under Parks and Rec as potential adjustments?
I had a question, yeah, I had three, actually.
Okay,
One of them was office supplies, jumping up $1,000 from $750 to $1,750.
what line item is that, Dan?
It's 04240
Okay.
under Parks and Rec.
Anthony, before you go, I'll just say that I've noticed office supplies pretty much going up dramatically in every department. I'm guessing it's just inflationary pressures, but
Or these are just
There is more to it than that.
Okay.
That is, so we've been running a lot more programming for older adults, and we decided to increase that budget line because we provide coffee and tea at a lot of those events, and that directly, that's why that increase is there.
okay.
To support those types of programs. So that's part of the reason why that went up so much.
Okay, that's helpful context. I'd be in favor with maintaining that line item. Did anyone else have any suggested adjustments or?
I've got two more.
Oh, go ahead, Dan. Sorry, I thought you were done.
Parks and Recs.
Yep.
04220 equipment goes from $0 to $1,000, and I wondered what that was.
Anthony, do you know what equipment increases are, or is it just we didn't budget for equipment before? I don't know.
Sorry, I'm switching between tabs. What line item was that, Dan?
It was 2104-220.
It says
just
miscellaneous
says
equipment for adult fitness.
Okay, I see it now.
Yeah, there was just no notation with it.
Yeah, so I think that is for like newer programs. Like we do want to work on adult fitness programs, like a yoga class, for instance, is something I'm interested in establishing. And so that line is allowing us flexibility to create those new programs as they pop up, and as we find instructors that can do those, we can get the equipment to have those.
Okay. And the 02864, which is the special events, went up $2,000 from $3,000 to $5,000.
Yeah, so I mean, we're trying to make our events bigger and better each year. We were able to add new lights to the Christmas tree for the Christmas tree lighting last year. We increased the amount we spend for the Halloween event. We did put on a winter family dance event. We want to do more wintertime events to get people out of the house and active and having some fun community events. So that's the purpose of that increase,
Okay.
and that's what that is.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else have any line items? No.
Dan had one more.
Did you have another one, Dan?
No,
No.
those were my four for,
Okay.
Did you find 04220 equipment went from 0 to 1,000?
Yeah, we
Was
just-
that
yeah, we
this
talked
year?
about that.
We just talked about that. That
Okay.
was for adult fitness programs. They're expanding services for those.
So I'm not recording any changes.
And I guess I would say it's good to get refreshed, and some of these, like the equipment one where it was just equipment.
Yeah.
I know you can notate things till the cows come home. I'm not complaining about that, but in the end, it's that bottom line number. So right now, I'm kind of passing over these, but I may come back to these and suggest we just hold the line FY '23. We'll sort of have to wait and see how the numbers shake out.
Okay. How do folks feel about, I mean, I know there's gonna be some things that are easy decisions, but there's some of these that we're talking about them, but then we're not really deciding, and then we're gonna move on. What do you think is the best strategy? Should we come back, should we try to make decisions tonight, or do we wanna loop back around at another workshop?
I'm in favor of trying to make decisions tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think to the maximum extent possible, but some of these smaller change ones, you know, $500 to $1,000, I don't want to spend a lot of time arguing about those. I
Yeah,
mean, ultimately, if somebody wants to present a package of $30,000 that includes a bunch of different small ones, that's okay with me, and maybe we can discuss that next time. But Nate has passed out a handout tonight that identifies a bunch of different possible, reductions and one increase in revenue. Well, avoided, the cable fee. 48,000. I think that for my personal, I mean, we haven't really discussed targets, and that's another issue. I mean, for me, I'm not comfortable going down to below the level required to avoid LD1. I'm sort of thinking in terms of about $500,000.
yeah.
I mean, that's not hard and fast, could be more, but I don't feel like we need, and my understanding is it would be over $800,000 to get that below LD1,
Yeah.
and I just think that's a lot.
We did talk about that, and there's a couple other workshops. I know that was a target Dan had proposed. I think I mentioned at the time that I also don't think that's entirely realistic, cutting that much from this budget. But I think you're right, Anne, that something around 500,000 might be more reasonable. But I mean, we can certainly see where we are. Maybe we could cut, I mean, but
Well, if I can jump in, Krista.
yeah, go ahead.
I sent you all a 3-page worksheet that has $546,508.51 worth of cuts.
When did that come up?
So,
Was that in your
Yeah.
email titled Budget Take Two? I don't remember seeing that.
yeah, I sent it
Okay.
yesterday.
Oh, okay, I might not have looked at it then. Okay.
So, yeah, I have outlined about that much in cuts
Okay.
from across the various departments.
Dan, you sent that
I
yesterday?
didn't get
I
that.
didn't get it.
Oh, I wonder why.
I don't think I got it either. That's why didn't want to.
I didn't get it.
We're happy to look at it, but I don't think we got it.
Well, it makes me wonder, I've had this trouble with Outlook, and I'm not sure why you didn't receive it, but I will correct that problem. Doesn't help us tonight, but I'll make sure you get it if I have to use my own personally now.
Okay. And I think you're right about having a bunch of little things might take up too much time, which is why when I was talking earlier, I had found some small things that add up, like telephone and electricity. And I think all these conferences I was going to highlight, perhaps I'll just type those up as because there were quite a few of them across departments, and at one by one they're small, but as they add up,
Yeah.
I can do that instead of going over each of them. I guess I'm struggling with how to do this efficiently, because when when we have a full budget season, we spend days and days on each department, and I don't want to go into the weeds quite that much, but I also want to respect people's thoughts about the small things.
Could I make
I think to
Yeah,
Ann's
Nate.
point about having a target, I think that's not a bad, not a bad way to go. I think we're looking at 500,000 plus in cuts. I'd like to eliminate the LD1 question, but I don't know if we can go quite that far.
Right. Okay, Nate, you said you had a suggestion for form.
If I may, I
Yeah.
just want to show the spreadsheet that I'm working on right now.
Sure, that might be helpful.
As you're talking, I'm trying to record the changes that you all have agreed on, and if I don't hear agreement from the whole council, I'm not tracking it, but, I'm going through it by line item and identifying the line in each budget what the expense is and the change. And right now, you're, with including the change to the cable franchise fee that I've put on this list that I mentioned to you before, but we didn't talk about, that's a revenue increase. You're at $158,000. So in order for me to be able to track your changes and convey them to the finance director, I'm gonna record them on this sheet.
Okay,
And what I might recommend to you is to go through each of the budgets and have each council member share any edits you might recommend for you to perhaps tabulate, and then instead of discussing each of them one at a time,
Yeah.
maybe go and look at the list, and if there are any that individual council members don't support, have that conversation item by item for the ones you might not agree with, rather than the ones that you would be willing to support. That's one approach.
okay.
I'm really sorry that you guys didn't get that. I don't know. It's very frustrating to me because I was in Teams and I was working through Teams and I sent it to you all through Teams, so I don't understand why you didn't get it. But I will resend that to you tonight. I think that does make the most sense for everybody to go through, come up with what they think it is useful and go from there. What you didn't get from me, unfortunately, was Nate had sent me a spreadsheet, and I had gone through and, well, if you remember how our workbook was, we had one worksheet for every department. I compiled all that into one spreadsheet and was able to sort the budget, the expense budget, either by the account name or by the account number or the sub-account number. So I was able to put together like all the electricity, all the legal, all of the various ones. And I thought I had sent you copies of those worksheets, but evidently for some reason you didn't get them. So I think that is the way to go forward, is for everybody to come back to the next meeting with their complete list of stuff. Because I agree, going through it this way is going to take us.
Well, right, I mean, I think we've all gone through it line by line and had things highlighted, at least, I mean, I did, but it sounds like we would need to tabulate those individually into separate documents. Is that what we're all agreeing to? I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand how I would do that. But
Right.
I do know, I mean, we have this document from
Yeah.
Nate, which is got in itself, $675,000 worth of cuts, right? I mean, I would want to subtract the $50,000.
Which document is that?
The one we got at the first workshop, that proposes cutting the $325,000 from the CIP for the offset for the fire vehicle, and Nate handed us a paper copy of it, and you can see my cats have had fun with it, but that's the document I'm looking at. And it's, like I say, I don't agree with all the cuts in this document, but to combine this document with the cuts we've talked about today from the CIP, I mean, I think we can easily get over, $700,000.
Well, cutting CIP by that amount doesn't reduce the budget.
Yeah, well, some of Nate's suggestions are not just the CIP, there's a combination of, we can skip over CIP ones with, we need to come back to the set aside, obviously, of the 325, but, yeah, why don't we start with, Dan, I don't know do you have access to this document still? I don't know.
Unless
Do you have an
Paper
I've
copy.
received so many to be
These are
honest.
just my recommendations.
Okay.
They're just ideas. They're not even necessary. Some of them I would recommend, some I don't, but they were brought to my attention as possible
Okay,
cuts. I can, Counselor McGuire, I'll email you a copy of this in case you don't have it readily available.
Actually, what's the name of the document?
I never sent it out. I just printed a copy for you all in your July 13th meeting. So I'll send you a copy of it.
You'll send it to all of us?
I can send it
Thank
to
you.
everyone.
I don't have it electronically.
okay, so, the one side was cuts you thought would be okay, Nate, and the other side was, like you said, some that
It's,
either were recommended to you or you thought were questionable. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, the ones on one side are the ones that that I am thinking about, that I was recommending. The ones on the other side of the sheet were ones that department heads had brought to me, and I'm recording them to share with you, but I don't necessarily agree with.
Okay, well, the side that starts with a cable franchise fee increase for revenues, that's the side that you would
Yes,
approve of,
that's
correct?
correct.
Okay, so let's start there. The cable franchise fee, obviously, we will take more money, that's no problem. We can skip over the CIP items for now, as we've already talked about some of them, or we'll return to the set aside. You already done the admin decrease of
Yeah, I'll put that
$500,
in.
you already did that. The law enforcement, I think we agreed to this last time, this reduction for the school resource officer, purchase of a new vehicle, they're moving that to a future year, is that correct? This MSAD?
Yeah, I just am trying to get clear assent from the council on any of these things, but if you all
Okay.
agree with that, I can
Yeah,
pop that in.
if the school resource officer is not, if MSAD 15 and the school resource officer are not budgeting for the purchase of a vehicle this year, I don't
Right.
think we need to either.
Right, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, so that's $41,000 we can remove. It looks like back to Parks and Rec, it looks like you've suggested moving their membership dues and professional development fees to the enterprise fund, is that?
Yeah, instead of, I've encouraged all the departments and department heads to invest in professional development, certification, and training. And so if there's a concern about, those, I completely understand. And I would also suggest that in this instance of the recreation department, they do have a lot of funds in their enterprise account that could be used for, instead of taking it out of the general fund, take it out of the enterprise fund.
I'm fine, that's what that fund is used for, rec programs, so I'm fine with moving that over if others are.
Yeah, I'm fine with it too. Was there a caveat there, Nate, or is there a downside to doing that?
No, I mean, we have to be careful. It's not a bottomless bag of money.
Right.
So but I've talked with Anthony about this, and he seemed to think that those costs could be absorbed into the program.
Okay.
I mean, the enterprise account pays for staff salaries and such,
Right.
as it is, right?
Correct. Generally, the stuff in the general fund related to recreation and parks is about hard costs for the town, for buildings and property, so.
Okay. So general insurance, that is an addition,
Yeah, we
right?
have an increase in projected insurance costs for this year of about $10,000. I'd like to just add that into the professional development budget, or excuse me, the
General insurance.
general insurance budget.
Okay. The next one was CIP. Was that one, the library video conferencing
That was
system?
the $10,000. Oh, no, sorry,
That-
that's a different one.
That's a
Yeah.
different one, right? We didn't, I don't know, maybe we'll
We
talk about
did.
that again with, we don't have Josh here, so. I
I'm
don't-
sorry, could we just back up to the general insurance? So the general insurance is actually an addition, like that's.
Yes.
yeah,
That's an
I'm asking you
addition.
to
Yeah,
add
yeah,
that.
okay.
Yeah. We did talk about the admin position, or the administrator position rather, for Public Works, deferring that staff change to FY '25. I don't think we had a firm answer for you, but I would be in favor of pushing off that staff change until FY '25 for the
That was for
state
the
cost.
engineer?
Yeah, the
position?
engineer
Okay.
position, yeah.
I support that as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're gonna need to resolve the leadership, an eventual leadership change unknown at this time
Right.
at the transfer station, and at Public Works too. But if Tim's willing to hang in with us for another year,
Yeah.
I'd be okay with this.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Right, so yeah, as Ann stated, I know that's something we're definitely gonna have to talk about again next year, but for this year, we can hold off. This isn't, the next one's an increase of $2,000 for a mailer. I'm assuming you're budgeting for potentially sending out budget information to
Yeah,
folks again, is that what
Either
you're?
for this year's if for your current budget deliberation or for next year, there's no money in any accounts for paying for a print
Okay.
ad to go out.
If we use this, if we did decide to send out another mailer for approving this FY '24 budget, would it use up this whole $2,000 and then we wouldn't have any funds for FY '25
Yes.
information?
Correct.
I propose we make it 4,000.
I know, that's what I would, yeah,
I think so too.
that's where I'm at. Hate to add more, but we need to be transparent. Okay, so the back page, again, is ones Nate has received as suggestions, but he's not necessarily in favor of, but I think we should still talk about them as they were suggestions from department heads. I'm gonna skip over COLA, because I think that's a larger conversation. Looks like we have suggestions here from Lauren, from the assessor's office to,
Yeah, there was some, we have
Reduce.
been, I've been talking with Lauren about her interest in attending the town manager conferences and trainings, and under the circumstances of the tightness of the budget, she proposed that, you know, perhaps cutting that in this year's budget would be a cost savings. It's outside of her normal role in her department, so.
okay.
Whereas the other training and professional development budgets, I generally support all of them. In this instance, her proposal was eliminating those specific lines.
So this is almost $1,000 total?
Yeah.
Okay.
But not her other professional
Right.
training budgets.
Okay, I see on line 02-150 under assessing, the $390 and the $590 for 2 MT-CMA conferences, I'm
Yeah,
assuming?
they're rolled
Where's the
into,
$100?
it's all rolled into
Oh, I
training
see
and
it here.
professional development.
It's under memberships and dues in the line above 02-101. Okay, yeah, it sounds like that does make sense, at least for
Yeah.
this year.
The next three items are technology items from communications and IT. And these are hardware components in the IT budget. These UPS are universal power supplies. They have a
Mhm.
battery backup and a pretty effective surge protector in them, rather than a power strip, which a surge protector basically fails the first time it gets struck by lightning. I'm generally in favor of keeping these purchases regular. Things tend to fall off the list, and these are things that fall off the list really quickly. But Josh and the IT department have suggested that they're still functioning. We can push back the regular replacement schedule a year if you feel it's necessary.
So we have equipment that currently would protect us from power surges. They're just old and
It's
need
just
replaced.
old. And
replacing.
as they
Okay.
get older, you don't know whether they're really working, and you
Yeah.
don't know when they're gonna fail, and just things like that.
Do you know what line items these are on? I found the 851 on line
Uh,
04260 for communications.
I don't have
No, okay.
those right off the top of my head, but I can get them to put into your,
I mean, I'm curious about the criticality of these. In my work life, in the wastewater field, lots of violations are caused by the failure of these. Like pump failures and, you know, illegal discharges and things like that. And so I sort of have this, maybe I have, I have a little sensitivity to cutting them, you know, if they're in a critical, you know, life safety type, you know, when I see, you know, the fire department and that sort of thing. I have a little nervousness around that particular terminology because of my work experience. But I also defer to the, you know, the professionals that, you know, I assume would not compromise a critical application.
I mean, maybe we could keep the fire department one and put off the GCTV one. Is
Yeah.
that-
That's what I was wondering, and hang
Yeah.
on to the old one from the fire department
Right.
in order to
is it
back up.
Back
yeah.
up. How do
Okay,
folks?
so I need dollar figures.
So I think we can remove one of the 3,800s for
Okay.
GCTV, but keep the backup UPS for the fire department. So
Okay.
don't make that cut.
Okay.
And then what is the battery backup for that 851 serving? Is that the whole office or?
I think these are individual units for desktop PCs. Like, you know, this is
Okay.
$850 to buy 10 of them to spread out around the office.
All right.
I'd be in favor of keeping that one. It seems like a low cost and there's a lot of documents and things we have on our computers here I don't want to lose. Okay. Okay. Oh, and the Cradle Point router, I know Josh mentioned that as a CIP cut potentially for this. That is something that serves as an emergency internet service for when there's outages townwide.
What's a new item that would?
It would be a
serve that?
new item, yeah.
I'm in favor of cutting it.
Yeah, I think we can cut that
Yeah.
Cradle Point router for now.
It's okay with me. Dan, you have a comment on that?
Dan, are you okay with removing the Cradle Point router from a CIP or purchase under communications, IT?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if you were, yeah, I guess going through it, if people have an objection, they'll just pipe up or. if you
Okay.
want-
Right, okay.
Okay,
All right, and then we already talked about the library materials as a decrease in
Yeah,
cost,
that's-
yeah, we already, yeah.
So as of this and the other materials that you've gone through, you're at 305,000 net in budget decrease.
Okay, well, that's
Yeah.
pretty good, actually.
what's the split between CIP, Nate, and
Oh, I'd have
regular
to,
budget?
Oh, that's right, some of those are CIP items. You're gonna make them do complicated Excel formulas on the spot.
No, it's just, you know, if you cut, once you cut below whatever we want to contribute to CIP, it doesn't really have any impact on the budget.
CIP is 162,500
Okay,
of the 305. And, you know, the CIP, okay, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, well, why don't we talk about COLA, because that's kind of a big number and a serious conversation. Not that all this isn't serious, but, so as it stands right now, we've all agreed to maintain the wage adjustments that were happening over a 2-year period, and this would be year 2 of 2 years. So we're not making adjustments to those agreed upon wage adjustments. But this COLA would be, currently it's at 6%. 4% is across the board and 2% is performance-based. So Nate, I'm just wondering, the proposal here on the sheet you gave us was decreasing from, and I know this is not necessarily one you're in favor of, but decreasing from 6% to 3% with a cost savings of $112,000. So I'm just wondering if we did that, what would that look like between the across the board versus performance-based
So
COLAs?
if you were to cut the COLA from 6% to 3%, it would be a savings of around $112,000.
But
But
on
how
this
would-
paper that we've got, it's shown at about half of that.
So,
Is that right?
yeah, the one I handed a revision out to you at the beginning of the meeting.
Oh.
The one that I gave you before, I had made an error, because I had already plugged that into a sheet I was working on. So it's $112,000 for that cut, and I'm trying to see what, the wage adjustment, the $75,000 wage adjustment line works out to about 2%. So if you took that 2% plus a 3% COLA, or whatever number you might want to come up with, add those together, it would be 5%, or whatever percent, 2 plus whatever total.
Well, my one concern is not everyone was receiving a wage adjustment. It was only for certain positions, so that they would remain competitive with their counterparts regionally. My one concern is, A, that not everyone received that wage adjustment, and B, if we cut it to 3%, would that leave any room for performance-based adjustments, or are we talking about just giving everyone a 3% raise across the
Yeah,
board?
I would probably recommend deferring that again for another year.
Deferring the,
Performance-based. If you're
Performance-based.
going to cut the COLA at all, I would defer the performance-based component another year.
I don't think I got the paper copy.
did you have another, is this another one?
Actually, this one.
Okay, there you go.
Mhm.
I personally, I would like to maintain some sort of performance-based COLA. I mean, it's just a matter of fact that there are some people who go above and beyond every year with their
Mhm.
jobs, and I would like to, respect and honor that through a performance-based raise. On the other hand, this is a large decrease of $112,000, and the constituents have asked us to make cuts places, and we're going to have to make some difficult decisions. This might be one of them. Personally, I would be in favor potentially of reducing this to 4% COLA with 3% across the board and a 1% performance-based increase. That's where that would be my proposal.
Oh.
Or we could keep it at 6 if people feel strongly about that also. I mean,
Is that workable for you, Nate, to have that 1%?
Yes, I will work it out however you all
Why
direct
don't
us
we
to.
go
but
4.5%
I-
instead
I-
of 6?
4.5%?
So that'd be.
So how would that work?
3/4 of the 224.
And then how would you work that with performance-based versus across the board? Or would you just do 4.5?
2 and 2.5.
I could, yeah, I can basically work it out with you however you want to. It is sort of a management decision, but this is this is a funding component, so this is really a council direction to me.
Go ahead, Ann.
I just have a question about how this works. Having worked for myself for the last 30 years, COLA is not part of my lexicon, really, in my daily life. So I'm just wondering whether if we reduce this, if it is sort of a mandate that every employee gets some, or whether if we could leave it up to department heads to reward those high-achieving ones and keep people who are well-paid and who haven't experienced that below-market wage that others have, or just leave the department heads with some flexibility for who gets what. I mean, I guess I don't know. Is that too crazy making?
I mean, that does make sense. Certainly, if the department heads understand who is at the top of their pay range and also, who's done the best job for the year. I don't know how we would vote on decreasing the amount with that direction, though. That's my.
Well, I mean, what if we just said, I'm sort of leaning toward the 3%, reducing the COLA line from 6% to 3%, and then just leaving it up to department heads. I mean, that's a pool of money that would somehow be divided up amongst the departments and they could just allocate it from there, but I don't know if that's a workable solution, so
Yeah.
I'm happy to be educated.
Go ahead, Nate, you have the best
I just
insight
would
here.
like to explain the way that we've implemented a goals-based performance evaluation tool. 2 years ago, we put a tool in place that sets goals that, for the town, for departments, and for individuals. And the town goals are, across the board, are the same, and they're generally about, the way that we serve the public and work with each other. The department goals are specific to goals set for the department that derive from council manager goals and from council conversations and feedback that I receive from you and the public. And then the individual goals are, for department heads, have to do with the administration of their departments. And for them and other employees are specific things for that employee to work on as a goal for that year. So the idea behind this is to have everybody sort on the same page about town goals and to create a tool for department heads to recognize the idea was not the entire COLA amount, but a portion of it, and then to have a tool to use to make determinations as to within a department, are there certain successes that they might want to recognize? Or are there certain goals that aren't being met that they want to address with the employee by, trying to reset expectations and work on achieving those goals in subsequent years? So I would prefer to see if it was my decision, a COLA amount like we did this year, and then a discretionary amount that I would work with the department heads on and John Hart on implementing.
So this year we had an across-the-board increase,
We
right?
tried to do the performance-based, but we weren't able to get it across the finish line. And because the biggest component to that was the COVID-based increases in the cost of everything.
Mhm.
So instead of, in recognition of the fact that the cost of living increased, we just did the flat COLA for the
Right.
entire amount. And that was on top of the wage adjustment increases that were done in last year's budget.
Right. Okay, do others have thoughts?
I agree with him.
Yeah. I liked your proposal of the 3 and 1 and to go to 4%, so we wouldn't get that full 112,000, but we would get
What would the amount be?
Yeah, I don't.
2/3 of it.
I can calculate that.
Yeah. Well, the 1% would be flexible,
Yeah.
in that not everyone would get it, so you might not be able to have a firm number.
Right, well, but the pool would
Oh, I see, right.
be reduced by, $76,000.
It would be reduced by, or that would be?
Reduced by $76,000.
So it would go from 224 to
to
76?
140, it would go from 224 to 148,
And the savings then would be about 80?
$76,000.
76.
That's good. That's 4%.
At 4%, yes.
Dan, what are your thoughts about doing a 3% across the board with a 1% performance-based COLA?
Yeah, I had been thinking about 4% total myself. At this point in the conversation, I'd support that.
Okay,
We may have to knock another % off, but I'm not really sure at this point.
all right. Why don't we move to that then, since there's a majority around it?
That
Like,
works for me. I can
so
do that.
4%, but 3% as across the board and 1% performance.
Can I offer another suggestion?
Sure.
This isn't a high money one, but under human resources, in the budget, and hang on, I should have teed this up before I, spoke, but there, I mean, we've, added wage adjustments and a COLA, and, there was some additional, funding. This is on page 19 of the council packet, under 03155, professional services. There was some additional funding, money in there for sympathy retirement and birthday, and let's see, service milestone award. The sympathy retirement birthday was 5,000, service milestone 5,000, employee appreciation gifts 3,000. I don't know. I mean,
I had those flagged also.
yeah. I mean,
On my list too.
yeah. So that would be a total of $13,000 reduction if we eliminated all three of those.
I have
We'd take 10 out of it anyway.
What's that?
I would take 10 out of it anyway.
10 out.
I had a memo from John on that, and he told me that those figures are, he came to those figures using recommendations from the Society of Human Resources. They recommend 1% of the overall staff budget to be used for those sorts of incentives. And so it's not exactly an arbitrary figure, but that's the formula that he used for those recommendations.
Are those new costs, or those things we're doing anyway right now?
No,
or-
we weren't doing them, or we were taking that out of other budgets where we could. So he actually used a 0.5% instead of a full percent, and that's how he came up with those
So when you
figures.
say you were taking it out of other
Yeah, it
budgets
would
where you
come out
could,
of
so
like the-
sometimes if you wanted to do a birthday celebration, it would be done, but it would just come out of some
Yeah,
other
it
line
would, it
item.
would come out of the manager's meeting budget, or the department head monthly meeting, like employee coffee hour budget.
So it sounds like if we got rid of this entirely, those would go away. Is that-
It's just getting increasingly difficult for us to build that into the program that we want, which is to be, building a system in that rewards high performance and provides training and professional development and access to certifications to encourage employees who are doing more, going the extra mile, and trying to develop their best practices, current industry practices, and achieving other certifications to help them do a better job in meeting the expectations of the public.
And that's all very important, but I think we also have to be cognizant of the fact that economically, these are really difficult times for some people. And, I think we have to make progress when we can, and we have to stay lean when we can.
What about 50% reduction in the total?
Right, that's what I was gonna suggest, a reduction perhaps, rather than just cutting it.
Yeah,
Well, that's why I said 10,000 instead of 13.
I was being more draconian. It's unusual, Jenny.
I don't know that I want to be associated with the adjective draconian.
I mean, we could cut 5 and have 8 total. For all 3 things, I mean.
I'm not being unsympathetic but I think people, we have moved on other fronts. We have made really good faith efforts on other fronts. We're not going to get there in one fell swoop. We're going to get there incrementally.
Right.
Over time. I've said this before. This isn't a chicken and an egg sort of scenario. It's really clear. We have to have the tax base. We have to have the tax revenue before we can increase the services and all of the other things that we would like to see. And we just haven't been successful as we'd all hoped in doing that at this point in time. So we're constrained. It's not a personal thing by any stretch of the imagination. It's certainly not a value judgment.
No.
Those are the cards we have to play with.
Yeah, Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, so the Service Milestone Awards, that's $5,000. That sounds to me sort of performance-based. It's actually something for an employee who's meeting certain milestones.
The way I read that, it was more like you've been here 5 years, you get an award.
Years of service,
Isn't
yeah.
or are we wrong? I don't know, Nate, what is that for?
We're talking about maybe something like years of service or accomplishing a certain certification or,
Yeah.
hitting some sort of other skills-based, department-specific skills-based or leadership and management type skill acquisition.
Mhm. And then employee appreciation gift, is that sort of an across the board?
We've done things in the past like buy fleeces for town employees, so we can all sort of present not a uniform, but an expression of being part of the town government, and also just as a way to say thank you.
Mhm.
And, it's important to remember that different people are motivated by different things personally and professionally. And
Right.
I think the fleeces were very well received, and I see people wearing them, especially in the colder months. So that's the sort of thing we're talking about. And at the employee training day this year, we did recognition for years of service at the 5-year increments, and it was nice to be able to give someone a small token of gratitude for their dedication.
And then the sympathy retirement / birthday, that's just to
Having
buy a
money,
cake or-
cakes, cards, flowers, receptions, things like that. That are all the things that people have said in previous surveys that they would like to do. They'd like to have more opportunities to build relationships with each other rather than just the day-to-day transactional nature of our work.
Mhm.
And to be able to feel like we can support people when they're having difficult moments. I can understand the impulse to reduce these budgets, and I'm sure we can provide, a meaningful program of offering these things at a lower budget level, if that's the council's direction this year.
Yeah, I guess I support some reduction there.
Right.
Mhm.
And I guess, yeah, and whether or not it's across the board of those 3 items or not, I don't want to dictate that, but leave that up to the.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps you and staff could come back with a proposed reduction. We've tossed around 8,000 total or 10,000 total, but I think we'd all like to see some reduction there.
I guess I'd like to see a reduction of 5,000. Is that-
That's what I was thinking,
So-
5 would be
so
appropriate, yeah.
For the sake of your conversation today,
Yeah.
why don't we just plug 5 in?
So
I'll follow up with
so
John.
then it would be 8,000 available.
Yes.
So with $5,000 reduction.
Wherever that goes, yeah.
Yeah,
14,400 to 9,400.
what, 14,400? Where are you getting? It was 13,300. Or,
Okay.
sorry, 13,000, not 300, 13,000.
You're looking at that budget, and I'm looking at the Excel budget, sorry.
Yeah, so it's a
Okay.
$5,000 reduction across those 3 lines. I mean, not uniformly
Oh,
in each. So
which in the
yeah.
total is 14,400 currently for that
Yes.
professional services
Right.
line. I see what you're saying.
I've got that as a budget line in Trio, so I have to cut it at that level.
I see what you're saying. Okay. Okay. Is there anything else like that, like Ann flagged, like that's kind of larger chunks like that, rather than just 1,000 or 500, just large amounts.
We're staying in the.
Yeah, within the
admin
HR
area,
group, I
right?
have a couple more.
Yeah, Dan has a couple.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan. Well, did you have one, Marty?
Well, I have, the ones I have are for, one was for, that I noticed for Parks and Recreation, the electricity part went from 3,600 to
Yeah.
19,200.
I'm
That's
gonna,
a big-
type up something with electricity increases, because I noticed those across the board that were some alarming.
And-
Yeah.
One, for example,
Wait.
from fire, dry hydrants went from 500 to 10,000.
Under public safety?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on my list too.
Chief is here and can
Yeah,
answer
Chief,
that
would
question.
you mind coming
right
up?
now.
Unless that includes
Well,
installing
okay.
new ones.
Did you write down what line item that was?
No, I
The number?
forgot to do that.
Dry
Dan, do
hydrants
you-
for public safety.
That's probably under utilities.
Do you know what,
Hang on.
Kurt Alcan, Public Safety Director.
so Marty, it was, dry hydrants went up
Dry
from
hydrants
500
went
to
from
10,000?
500 to 10,000,
I missed that one.
unless it's a typo.
$500
hydrants,
isn't
like-
enough to fix anything for a dry hydrant. To do any meaningful repair, it's gonna cost at least $10,000. My personal feeling is we're throwing money out the window. Because as soon as you fix a dry hydrant, it fills back in with sand, and I'll be okay if you cut that to zero.
Are we obligated to fix dry hydrants, or like,
No,
is it a safety issue if we
it
were
is a
to-
safety issue.
Oh, okay.
But they're currently unusable. I'd say at least 75% are unusable right now because we can't afford to suck rocks and sand through our pumps.
So even when we fix them, they become unusable shortly thereafter, is that what you're saying?
Within a matter of a week.
Oh,
There are some minor repairs we can make to piping, where there's a broken cap or something like that. But we don't allow dry hydrants any longer because of this very reason.
It's part of the reason I made the pitch about cisterns that I've been trying to get through, is to take the place of these dry hydrants. It is, actually, it's in the public safety utilities, not public safety proper, so it's 0443026860 is the dry hydrants. No, that might not be the right number.
sorry, I am, I'm just still not finding
It's
it.
on,
Yeah.
it's on the public safety budget.
I
It's
can get it if you want.
Yeah,
044102
So I support going to zero with that if there's no point in fixing
Yeah, I
these
can
things.
support that too.
Me too, yeah.
oh, there, I found it, okay. Yeah, if you really feel that it's not even a useful service, because it's, while it's a public safety issue, it's not one that sounds like we can even really resolve even if we throw money at it, so.
You're just throwing good money after bad. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's take that out then, yeah. Thank you, Kurt.
If I may be so bold to talk back to COLA and stuff like that.
Yeah, please do, yeah.
We're constantly trying to play catch-up in the per diem market.
Okay.
Full-time people have their contracts, so that's locked in stone, but every year per diem rates go up around us, and we're just trying to play catch-up. So that potentially, I'm not saying it will, but that could potentially cost us some per diem members, which could end up even dramatically increasing our overtime budget. So we're taking out of one pot and then
Okay.
spending it in another.
Didn't you agree to have the same per diem rate with towns around you last year? Is that,
That's what I remembered too, yeah.
yeah?
It didn't happen.
Oh, it
Didn't
didn't
work.
work, oh, okay,
Yeah, it was a nice idea.
okay.
It was great on paper, but we all talk about it ahead of time, and then budgets come out, well, you guys increased, but now we're playing catch-up again.
Okay,
It's just the way it is,
yeah. Dan, you had
unfortunately.
a comment?
Yeah, I would just suggest that maybe that's not what we should be using COLA for. I mean, if we're not competitive on our wages, then we should be making adjustments to wages, not using COLA to try and fill that gap, because the COLA should have a very specific increase. I mean, it's a cost of living is what it is, and we're using it for performance, and it sounds like we're also using it to try and stay current with wages. And I would suggest that that's not the best policy. That's not the best way for us to budget going forward. If
Go
we
ahead.
need to make adjustments from year to year in base wages, then we need to hear that.
Noted.
And not have these sort of artificial mechanisms built into the budget to try and fill a gap.
Well, would you have a proposed per diem increase? I mean, we can increase that line item, right? Nate, or Nate?
Well, so, yeah, per diems for the fire, public safety are sort of different in the sense that we did do wage adjustments. That's what that wage adjustment line is for, is to recognize that some of the employees' pay was not competitive with the 12 other municipalities that we looked at. So I'm confident that those numbers reflect a place where the town needs to make changes. And I also agree that cost of living adjustments, COLAs, should be, based on market forces and CPI and things like that, and not be used to backfill wages, but we do need to do both. And on top of the consumer price index went up 3% from June to June last year, so a 3% COLA is reasonable to that. The 1% performance-based, I think, could reflect the average of what other municipalities are doing for their overall COLA this year, but also recognize that. And I've heard Gray citizens say this in your meetings and to me elsewhere, that they'd also like to see some component of performance increases be based on recognizing those standout employees who, go beyond and having an opportunity to address performance issues with other employees who aren't doing that. So it's kind of, to me, it's all three, but.
Yeah, but I don't disagree with you at all, Nate. I agree 100%, but the COLA we should use COLA for just what it is, a cost of living.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to represent in the budget. I agree with that. When it comes specifically to per diems, we've had, just for the last 2 years I've been here, Kurt, we've gone through 3 different ways of trying to do this. And that competition from other public safety departments has been really challenging. And so, council, that's part of the reason why we've recommended the main purse insurance program for the public safety department, because more than any of the other things you're talking about, that's what's going to fill the gap and make the difference on our ability to staff full-time positions and not be so reliant on per diems, who are great. We love our per diem folks, but we'd like to be able to be more independent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
right. Yeah, I don't disagree with you that these are all difficult decisions, and perhaps where we're making a change one place, it's gonna negatively impact something else. Well, it's all negative impacts, they're all decreases, but, I would just advocate that you come up with maybe a new number for the per diem. I don't know if that could, because right now it's budgeted at $250,000. I don't know, would amending that impact your flexibility for hiring at all, or is?
I can certainly go and look at the numbers and
Okay.
do the math.
Okay, yeah, I mean, if you have, knowing that we might cut COLA, maybe you could look at those a little differently.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think Dan makes a good point, and that I've always sort of felt a little queasy too about having that, performance-based, having some sort of hybrid between COLA and performance-based, and I wonder if it wouldn't make more sense to just take that 1% out of COLA, or at least in the future, and call it performance-based. This is a fund for performance-based pay increases.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We can change that line item name in Trio and do exactly what you all are talking about and save you the burden of needing to talk about it any further. If
Yeah,
you want to
that'd
split
Yeah, that would
COLA
work for
into
me.
3%, performance-based into 1%, we'll just call that line annual wage adjustments and be done with it.
Yeah,
Performance-based wage adjustments. I think just to distinguish them from others, because there are some that we're really trying to bring people up to something closer to parity, but the performance-based I think that it's worth naming it that way.
Yes.
So in Trio, it's just wage adjustments,
Oh.
and then we break it out into subs. So I'd like to keep it as wage adjustments, and then we'll put COLAs, market rate, and performance all under the same umbrella.
Just as a notation, is that?
Yeah, and that's just for our internal use.
Yeah.
Like what's
Right.
in Trio is just wage adjustments.
Okay.
Well, and in the public safety budget, there's $300,000 currently proposed for per diems and overtime.
Right.
Yeah,
And I mean, there's some full-time employees in that number. I mean, I don't know what that mix is, but, the overtime budget's proposed is going from 25,000 to 50,000.
And that's reflecting working conditions that we're dealing with right now. The increase
Yeah,
in the
but
per
that's,
diem.
I understand that, but from my vantage point, I'm thinking, what's the impact of hiring another full-time employee on those numbers?
Well, we're not proposing to hire any new people this year. We're taking a year off so we can lessen the impact of the main PERS.
So there's more than, there's more factors in this than just a regular salary increase in the public safety department. The call volume's increasing. We're trying to incrementally do more calls with the same level of staffing. So those changes in the per diem line and the changes in the the retirement for the public safety employees, they're not linearly related to just a year-to-year COLA increase. They're also including operational changes and staffing needs that are fluctuating from year to year. Some years our per diem budget is higher. Some years our staff wages and overtime budgets are higher. And some years they're both higher because the call volume is growing quickly. And Kurt has presented in the past some statistics and information to show you that our simultaneous multiple call response has gone up tremendously also, which is an indicator that there's more demand than the current level of staffing can always manage without calling in mutual aid. So that's why we're making the recommendations for increasing staffing over time. For this year, instead of asking for 2 new positions, we're asking for more money in the per diem budget and the other operational budget.
We haven't been able to fill up paramedic spots for well over a year. And
Yep.
we're banking on the main PERS retirement part to make that happen.
Well, none of us have mentioned doing anything to the retirement part. Well, I think we're all on board for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
We just morphed into this, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just
that
trying to
doesn't have
catch all the whole thing, to try to make sure
Well,
everybody's clear.
Yeah, I don't want to confuse the issue myself. I mean,
Fair.
we're all in on the retirement piece for all the reasons that have been mentioned.
right.
It doesn't figure into in my mind, to the calculation around the per diem costs and the overtime costs, so. Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, Kurt, yeah, I would just, if you want to look at the numbers again and just come back to us with we can maybe get a memo to Nate, we could just, around the per diem numbers and how COLA might affect your ability to hire for that. We
Sure.
can-
Happy to.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. I just want to poll everybody. Do we want to, we're at kind of a good stopping point here. It's 8:10. Do we want to adjourn for the night or do we want to continue talking? I'm kind of feeling like maybe it would be a good idea to stop here.
See you Monday.
I actually have one other.
You have one
just
other,
to be
okay, that's fine.
Indefatigable here. The Gray Senior Tax Assistance, and I'm sorry I missed the
Yeah.
other budget workshop, so you may have already have discussed that, but is that something?
That was on the table.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a bit of a longer conversation, so
Okay.
I had that on my list too, but I didn't,
Okay.
I was hesitant to bring it up right now, given
Okay.
the time. Oh,
It's on
Tim,
mine
did you?
still.
Did you have anything with my operational budget?
Let me look.
Yeah, that would be a good question for all three of.
Yeah, let
these
me
folks
just-
who are
Yeah.
here tonight.
I didn't have anything for Kurt that we haven't already
I don't think I do.
talked about, or that I won't talk about in other places, like electricity.
I have one for Kurt.
Oh, you did, Dan? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, if I can. Cell phones, Kurt. We've got this project for the radio communication that is hopefully gonna improve that. But the cell phone line's going from $5,800 to almost $11,500.
Yeah, I picked that up. though.
To the best of my knowledge, that's based on current prices. I don't usually touch that. I don't touch the phones, cell phones, or internet.
Yeah, I had flagged a bunch of telephone and cell phone increases that I was
Yes,
gonna type
yeah.
up, so that was one of them. I wasn't, go ahead, Nate. Yeah.
Regarding telephones across the board, we were advised during the budget creation process that the previous numbers were not capturing the full cost.
Right.
And I don't know by what formula or process those changes were made, but I can tell you that we did have that conversation.
Yeah, I remember asking about it, and that, yeah, that, I recall that was the response
Yeah,
that I.
I honestly could not get you the information that you need in detail to, you know, to like dissect those changes in time for your, if you're looking to hit the goal that I proposed of getting a first read of revised warrant articles at your August 15th meeting, I don't know that I'm going to be able to get you the explanation for all of that in time.
Well, I don't think I could approve a $6,000 increase. I'm just surprised, to be honest with you, Kurt, that you guys need $12,000 worth of cell phone.
Here's what I can tell you. These numbers were based on the actual billing that we were getting over the course of FY23. So they're not made up numbers. They're
I'm not
tied to.
accusing anybody of making.
Oh, I understand, Counselor. I understand. I'm just trying to tell you as best I can where these figures came from.
Okay. The other one is $3,000 for mileage and toll reimbursement.
Again, that's not something I touch. I believe that's ACO.
ACO, what's that?
I believe that's for the
Animal
animal
control
officer.
officer.
Oh,
We
okay.
don't see that money.
I'm sorry, I missed the description of ACO.
Animal control, sorry.
Oh, animal control. Oh, okay. Well, I did notice that within the animal control budget, they're all zeros.
Yeah,
The cost of the contract cost for the animal control officer is in the public safety budget. I saw it just this afternoon. It is wrapped up into the per diem personnel budget.
Oh, okay. All right. And then I noticed rescue billing jumped over $9,000 in 1 year. I know this is a service that we pay for. How long have we been with the current outfit?
I believe we've been with them 5 years now. It's not something I contracted out personally, it was done by admin.
Sorry, that came across all garbled for me.
Oh.
Maybe I'll just wait until next week.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kurt. Did anyone else have anything for public safety? No.
Public Works.
Yeah, I think we're good with public safety, Kurt. Tim, if you want to come up, I had one thing, aside from electricity and stuff that I just will type up separately. I had two things. One was the cost of postage went up. I'm just wondering how much
Yeah.
mailing you do.
That's something that the finance director
Right,
put in my budget, so,
okay. Do you do mailings?
yes,
Okay.
yes, we do.
Okay, it was
We do-
$500, it wasn't a
We do
lot.
have to send mailings in quite frequently to the state police.
Okay.
Because of the inspections we do inspections on all the town vehicles. And, I mean, there's some things that I have to return that come in that may not be exactly what we ordered, so, I mean, that's,
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't aware of what you would be mailing, so that's
Yes.
helpful context. And then the only other thing under additional road work, 05-53, we currently have plowing of public easement roads.
Yes.
Budgeted at 177,500, and I just was wondering if that accounted for the addition of that Woodcock Drive.
That does, and it
Okay.
also, the reason why that jumped 25,000 was because we were told, one of our contractors is on his third year, which is optional.
Okay.
And he told me, and if he's gonna do it his third year, the price is gonna go up. And it's very, very difficult
Right,
to find people to plow private roads.
right. I recall we only had one bid last year,
Yes.
so, yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's right.
kinda like to retain him.
Okay.
It-
Are we going out to bid for that anytime soon?
No, because his third year is optional. It's next year.
Oh, next year,
Yes.
so his contract's good through this fiscal
Yes.
year? Okay. That was the only thing I had for Tim. Did anyone else? No? Okay. All right. Thank you for sitting through this
Yes.
tonight, all
No
of you.
problem.
Yeah.
Anything
For Doug, oh, I know, Doug's always here. Are you wanting to? No,
And
no.
Anthony's on.
I think we were done with rec. Yeah, Anthony,
Okay.
you can certainly go. Let me quickly go through planning. Did anyone else have anything for Doug? I'm trying to find my notes.
I don't think I did.
I feel like I had something, but I.
I did.
Counselor McGuire.
Oh, go ahead, Dan, you had something? Assessing community development, here we go. I'm not using the packet, I'm just like,
Advertising in community development went from $1,000 to $7,000.
advertising,
Yeah,
yes.
This is related to the Doug can speak to this.
Right.
For posting public notices in the Portland Press Herald rather than the Lakes Region Reader, based on that policy discussion we had earlier this year.
I thought that might be it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, the only thing I had a question for.
You got more? And
Oh,
if-
go ahead.
If I may.
Oh, sure, go ahead,
The other thing is that we added a little bit anticipating that if we, as the council would like to move forward with the new zoning, that's probably going to kick that up a little bit.
Right,
Okay.
outreach for the zoning.
Exactly right.
The only thing I had a question for, Doug, which actually wasn't in planning, community development budget, it was in the communications and IT budget. It was, $20,000 for the document scanner. Wasn't that for your department, I believe?
This
to
is for the
scan
development office to
Right.
use scanning any documents that come in for permits, infractions, what else? Subdivision applications, things like that.
And, I'm sorry.
Please.
Yeah,
And so the objective is to not only new documents, but to begin, just like the Cumberland County Registry of Deeds, they started with the most current and they worked backwards. We are on a long-term mission to have a comprehensive, publicly accessible database, including the many years of paper copies. This document scanner is, the major advantage is it goes right to the right piece of property. You don't have to enter it and so it's efficient.
right, it's saving a lot of manual,
Yep.
staff time,
You
isn't
set
it,
up,
right?
you put
Yeah.
in the map and lot, and then you punch everything, the paper copies. It's almost a carbon copy of what the Registry of Deeds has done. And the town is on a long-term mission to have a comprehensive, accessible database of old code files, new code files. If a piece of property happens to be in a subdivision, there's a link to the Cumberland County Registry of Deeds with the plan book and page
Wow.
for that subdivision. Everything that we've done since I've been here, we have done so towards that long-term goal. And as we continue to implement that and make forward progress, it has significantly reduced the foot traffic from real estate folks because they can access everything online.
Yeah.
It's part of that long-term goal that we are midway through in implementing.
Okay, yeah, and so I wanted to point it out, because I know we had talked about it before during budget season, but that it is a large line item, and I remember that there was just a lot of efficiencies for staff time that would support the cost, but, I didn't really want to cut it, I just wanted to raise it.
Well, I mean, if it is a long-term goal, I mean, maybe deferring it for a year would, you know, would be acceptable. I mean, it would be acceptable to me to defer it for a year.
I don't know, what do you think about that, Nate?
I would say that since I started working here, we have made efforts to improve the level of customer service and set realistic expectations with visitors. And we've done some proactive things in the code office and planning office to set up development meetings and pre-construction meetings. And we've heard a lot of suggestions from the public about how we can deliver better service in the development office. And one of the issues that comes up consistently is around access to records. For me, coming from an IT management background, I think the sooner we're able to capture every document that comes in the door, get them put into the server in a way where it can be shared with all of our other software systems, will help us to do a better job of using our software systems the way they're supposed to be used, and that we'll be able to deliver better day-to-day customer service, but also create a more robust record, public record for all of the documents going into the future. And that will help the three departments that work out of the development office do a better job of coordinating their response, which also meets our cross-training and resiliency goals. So yes, it's optional, and I think it's a highly valuable investment if you're able to fund it.
Yeah, I agree, it's highly valued.
If I may.
I'd agree, but it's the if part I'm not sure about yet.
Go ahead, Doug.
I'm sorry, don't mean to interrupt. It was intended to work in conjunction with the new planning position, the new planning assistant position, so
Right.
that if there's downtime, then we can make efficient use of that person's time by working towards this long-term goal. It was kind of intended to be hand in hand.
Right, I recall that also. Personally, I'm the one who raised it, but I was calling it out because it's a large line item, and I just thought it warranted discussion. I personally would be in favor of keeping it. I think it's, as Nate and Doug were saying, it really supports the department's efficiencies, but also it provides greater transparency to people's ability to access the documents they need and things, and I think it's an important
Me too.
thing to keep.
I'd be in favor of keeping it.
Marty, how do you feel?
I agree with that.
With me or who?
Yeah. I must be tired. 'Cause I wasn't paying attention.
All right,
Sorry.
that's okay. Okay, well, let's leave it in for now, and, you know, we've talked about several things we might need to come back to.
Well, I mean, it seems like I'm alone in this, right?
No, Dan said he,
Oh, Dan is.
yeah, we were
covering
kind
it too.
of, tied, and Marty was unsure, so.
Okay. Yeah, so stay here.
Yeah, we can come back to it if needed, but I'd like to leave it in for now. Okay, so I think what do we have for a total, Nate?
As of the changes that you've made, 394,570,
That includes CIP though, or?
including CIP. And I'll
Okay.
just say, you know, CIP comes out of the bottom line of the budget, general fund comes out of the top, but when you're looking at your total budget, and that's what
Yeah, the warrant
goes
has.
into the warrant,
yeah.
it is making a net. We haven't talked about the proposed set aside for FY '25, and
Right.
Yeah,
I don't want to presage your discussion, but I do have a thought to share about that whenever you're ready to take
yeah,
that topic
I'd like
up.
to, right, I think next time, the big things I think that are left are the set aside of 325,000 for the CIP. What was I gonna say? Oh, and we also, there was $19,000 for the municipal senior tax relief program that we wanted to come back to. And then I think, yeah, I'm planning, and I would suggest everyone does this, if you have like smaller items that add up to large totals, maybe type those up with and we can talk about them as one large item next time. But I think those are the big things. And then also, we were considering increasing the bond to potentially cover bridges or some other things we might want to bond instead of paying for outright.
Wasn't it, I think this is before I was on the council previously, didn't you bond for some vehicle purchases? I think that I remember hearing that, but that might have been Dan, probably,
I don't-
you're the one who would, might
yeah, I don't know.
remember that.
Those are larger ticket items, Ann.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it was more than that, because I remember hearing that because we had a big chunk of money to work with and could buy stuff in cash, at least at that time, this was like 4 years ago, we were able to get better, because we were buying, I think we had to replace a number of vehicles, and so we were kind of buying bulk, in essence, from,
Yes.
and that helped to reduce costs, or to reduce prices that we had to pay. But it's a little bit different with what we're proposing to buy now.
Yeah, both the economy and our bank account are different than
Right.
they were when we made those purchases.
Right. Nate, does your total include the additional 48,000 in revenue from the
Yes, it
spectrum?
does.
Oh, okay, because it seems like I've got a list I've been keeping in, and I'm like at 490,000. So,
I will share my list with you.
Yeah,
all.
okay, that sounds
Yeah, I think
Something I
Nate's
missed.
been conservative about whether, if we had to be
Yeah,
like a
I'm
definitive
only-
yes.
yeah, I'm only putting something on here if all 3 out of 5 of you nod your head yes.
okay. I think we're doing
Yeah.
better than
I
that.
think that's where the straw poll would help, because I
Yeah.
think it,
So I'm hoping that my document will help you with your straw poll conversation
Okay.
and to identify any additional figure or any additional areas where you want to discuss. So I'll send that to you. You have a meeting scheduled for Monday the 7th at 5 p.m.
Isn't that Tuesday?
Sorry.
That's Monday.
Oh, it's Monday.
Right,
Okay.
and, oh, yes, before we go, sorry, everyone, I know it's late. Nate had proposed potentially adding another workshop on the 8th as a tentative day. I don't know, do we feel like we want to put that on the books now? Or
Sure.
do we want to see what we can get done on Monday and with the hopes that we'd be done?
Yeah, I'd say we put it down tentatively.
Okay,
I have another commitment
What
that
time?
night, but
5 or 6?
well, we don't know yet, hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a meeting at 7 that night, but,
Could we do the 10th? What was your idea
I'm
with the
out of
8th?
town for
Oh,
the rest
you
of
were,
the week.
you were out
can
of,
meet, I just won't be here.
no,
honestly, I think we're close. I really don't want to draw this out. You guys put in like, what, 100 hours into budget this
I
last
don't even,
winter
we had like
alone?
13 meetings, it was
Yeah,
ridiculous.
let's, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think we should, I mean, it's not that it's not important, but it's just like, let's just get her done, because we have a lot of important work.
I know,
to
we're
do.
we're not planning for our retreat yet and on
Yeah.
other things and, yeah,
Yeah.
right, there's a
So,
lot going
I
on.
mean, I would just, let's just, if Monday, let's stay until we're done, and just get her done. And then we have that final chance to approve, I guess, at our next full council meeting, which is the 15th. But I just feel like,
Well, we could
let's
also
not
have
draw this
we
out.
could also have a special meeting if we are not prepared for the 15th. We could have a special meeting just to approve the warrants.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I mean, our
Yeah.
goal is to be done by the 15th, but, if
Yeah,
we
I mean-
need to, we could.
There's some sort of, I can't remember the name of the law, but, the time it takes to do what you need to do expands as your time available
Yep.
expands.
Yep.
and-
Yep.
And I
I've heard
just
of
feel like
that,
if we
yeah.
give ourselves permission to keep meeting and keep meeting and keep meeting, we'll just be rehashing this stuff. I think we're closer.
That's kind of where I was,
Yeah.
I was hoping we could get it done by Monday and,
Yeah.
and maybe we'll have a long evening, but, I'd rather just be here once rather than twice,
Yeah.
personally.
Me too, absolutely.
2 days in a row.
Yeah.
Dan, are you okay with just keeping our Monday workshop for now and trying to get it all done by Monday?
yes, I
Okay.
think that's a good plan.
All right, let's do that then. And unless anyone has any objections, I would like to adjourn at 8:31 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Second
All right,
all?
no,
Yeah,
no.
we're out for workshops, you know.
Have a good night, everyone. Night,
Yeah.
Dan.